Hey, everybody, this is Mike, and you're watching Reelblack TV. And today we have the honor and privilege of being with Sabaah Folayan, who is the executive producer and director of XXXTENTACION Look at Me, which premieres on Hulu on May 26th.
You about to have the biggest song in the country. Now is about your family, about your career, about you accomplishing everything you ever wanted.
The rapper XXXTENTACION,
artist whose real name is Jose Onfroy,
has been shot.
He was a kid. He was exciting. He was polarizing. I knew people wouldn't forget him.
Yeah, hey, yeah. There's definitely a difference between Jose Onfroy and XXXTENTACION. Jose Onfroy was weak. Nobody cared about Jose Onfroy until he took on the persona as XXX.
You know how you got that little voice in your head and it be like, yo, don't do that. I don't think he had that.
Y'all know that I'm successful? Suck my...
What attracted you to this movie, to tell this story about XXXTENTACION?
Well, when I was invited to interview for it, obviously I was aware of the controversy, and I was really explicit about who I am, what my values are, what my beliefs are. And half of me kind of expected to not, be hired because of this. Half of me expected, he was huge. He had a huge fan base. You could probably find someone who was a fan and, to celebrate him exclusively. And when the executive producers are actually Cleo and Solomon and Rob, I'm one of the producers, but not an executive producer.
Okay, I'm going by the notes. I'm sorry.
No worries. But when I spoke to them about those values and they were really receptive, that's when I became excited, because I was like, here's an opportunity to have a really important and difficult conversation on a really grounded and impactful level that could possibly reach young people. I'm really interested in speaking to young people because I was a young person who felt like there were very few, mentor figures or people who were really speaking to me on the level that I felt that I was at. I think that a lot of times we don't give young people enough credit for how smart they are. And they get smarter and smarter. They have the benefit of all of our experience. So sometimes it's hard to sort of, I just wanted to reach young people with this message. And I felt like this was a great opportunity to benefit from the platform he had created and carry forward a conversation that he had started to have.
Right. So some of these topics that weave into the story are those of mental health and domestic abuse, domestic violence. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. So, if you're familiar with him, you are probably familiar with the allegations against him. And I think what people don't know is that he was diagnosed bipolar, and that he had a lot of early childhood trauma that he grappled with. And I think this story really it exposes a lot of systemic issues in a very subtle way, because you have a young woman who has no support, who is dealing with housing insecurity, her own mental health challenges. And then you also have a young man who's dealing with mental health challenges, and he's coming up against the criminal justice system that in many ways is exacerbating the issues, because first of all, it's putting him in a defensive position where he cannot be accountable for fear of losing his entire freedom in life. And it's also just not the right tool, so this is an extremely delicate situation, and it's being applied with a hammer. And so I think there's a lot of play. I don't know if that exactly answers your question.
No, that makes perfect sense. And it speaks to a lot of the issues. With one of the criticisms of the film comes from 50 Cent. I don't know if you've heard this. I'm sure it's been floating around in terms of like leaving out part of the story about Aliyah and her pregnancy. Can you say more about what
whether
Aliyah was pregnant at the time of the violence was left out of the movie, according to 50 Cent?
In Geneva.
Oh, was it Geneva? Okay, I'm sorry, Geneva.
Okay, no problem. So Geneva, in the field of, kind of care for domestic violence survivors, and also in the field of any type of treatment, it is not recommended to surface the details of a person's medical history. My understanding is that Geneva did not provide her medical records in order for them to be made public. I can't imagine what a person who is in an abusive relationship with no home, no alternate home to live in. I can't imagine being in that situation. My understanding is that she believed that she was pregnant at the time. X believed that she was pregnant at the time. People around X knew that X believed that she was pregnant at the time. And then when she tested, there was an absence of pregnancy hormones. I'm not sure what that criticism means or suggests. It's actually a bit confusing to me.
Yeah, no, I think I appreciate you addressing it, though. I mean, because that's sort of the lead out to the, that's some of the first press coming out on the film is this note that 50 Cent had. So I appreciate you addressing that.
I remember him telling me, I'm making music for the broken people, for the people that feel how I feel.
Look at me. He was an incredible talent. He should not be anyone's idol.
People didn't want to be around him. That was his biggest battle, himself.
My son would not sleep at night. He would tell me he hears voices. They told me that he was bipolar.
Darkness self. He was getting more famous by the day.
Are there parts of the story that did make the cut that you wish had at this point, or?
Well, I think that, there's so many people that he impacted. Like someone like Denzel Curry, for example, is a young rapper from South Florida that he was really close with, who influenced him creatively and, kind of helped stamp him and seal him in the underground scene. There just wasn't enough time and space to speak to everybody. So I know that there are probably more people out there who had something important to say. And, it's a 2-hour film about an entire life. So it could have been a 5-part series. We could have gone deeper into the songs and the craftsmanship and the times in the studio and the times on tour. And I think the things that a traditional music documentary covers also, that there was just this big elephant in the room about who he was and the things that he did that had to take up space.
No, I think you did an awesome job. Now you come to filmmaking in a unique way. I mean, how do you think that colors your approach to telling stories and making documentaries specifically?
Yeah, that's a great question. It definitely shapes everything about my approach because I come to the process as a human being that is wanting to walk with people through shaping a narrative with them. I tell stories with people who want to tell their story. And I try to do it in a way that by the end of it, they have a greater feeling of agency and they have some type of reconciliation with the story and the content of the story. Best case scenario. I can't always control how people feel, but me having a background in mental health, me having some exposure to interviewing in a clinical setting allows me to proceed with a certain amount of care. And my belief is that care can be felt and experienced by the audience and hopefully even give people some insight into how they can have difficult conversations in their own lives.
So ultimately, what do you hope people take away from the film?
I hope people see just how deep the need is for mental health care and support for young people and across the board. I hope that funding comes toward the mental health industry. I hope that the music industry becomes 10 times more sensitive to, these cries for help that we hear throughout the music, and we just keep partying, and do we stop and actually provide that help? Do we stop and actually reflect on what that means? So I just hope that there's a greater sensitivity and an understanding that, the moment where something tragic happens, it's too late. But there are all these opportunities and spaces where we can show care, we can show support and try to prevent some of these things from happening.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you, Sabaah. So XXXTENTACION, Look at Me premieres on Hulu exclusively this Thursday, May 26th. All right. Thanks again. Enjoy the day.
Thank you.
he realized he had an obligation that was bigger than himself.
To do what he's done in 2 years, whether you loved it or whether you hated it, you just had to acknowledge it.
Someone that's afraid of